Hey everyone. I walked to the piano today, and one of my favorite pieces of music is sitting right here. I just connected this to some thoughts that I was having earlier today. We took a trip earlier. We went to a big sand dune called Sleeping Bear. And when I say we, I mean myself and Annalise, my daughter, and my brother and his wife, and their two kids, who are also, they're 4 and 6, so they're just slightly older than Annalise. Annalise is 3. And we went to this Sleeping Bear. It's a giant sand dune. And the thing that to do is to climb up the sand dune. When you're little, you just climb up the front of the sand dune and run down it, and that's enough. Eventually, there becomes this, you can walk all the way across the sand dune to Lake Michigan, and it's a relatively challenging walk just because of the distance, and you're walking in sand, and it usually kind of takes a half day or so, and it feels like a family tradition. For as long as I've been alive, we've been going to Sleeping Bear. And there's a legend of Sleeping Bear. There's a legend, a Native American legend, for how this sand dune got here. And not just the sand dune, but because when you get to Lake Michigan off the coast, there are 2 islands, the North and South Manitou Islands. And the legend for how these islands, which are also very sandy, and then the sand dune got there, is that on the other side of the lake, there was a mother bear and her 2 bear cubs. And there was a huge forest fire. The whole land went up in flames. And the bears had to jump in the lake and start swimming. There was nowhere else to go. They had to just leave their land. So the mother bear jumps in, she tells the babies to follow them. They start swimming across the water. And they swim all through the night. And the next morning, the mother bear reaches the shore, and she turns around to wait for her babies, her 2 bear cubs. And she waits and she waits. And the babies don't arrive. And so, but she lies in the sand forever. She lies on the shore forever. And then the legend says the Great Spirit takes sand and covers her body and covers the 2 bear cubs out in the lake. And that's how these islands got there. And that's how the sand dune got there. And what has always struck me about this story, especially as a kid hearing this story, it's such a sad story. because you wish the ending were different. And what came through for me today, because I was wrestling with, well, do I tell Annalise this story? Do I tell Roman and Claudia, my brother's kids, this story? Turns out they already knew it because they ended up recounting it later. But my question was, well, do I tell her this story about the bears? And because, I mean, it's the legend of the place. You can't change that. That's the legend. But it's also a story that has where the animals, the characters that we grow attached to, die. And what struck me was how this is a Native American myth. And oftentimes in Native American myths, at least the ones I'm familiar with, and I'm by no means exhaustively well versed, but there is an acceptance of death. There's no problem with death. It's not I don't know whether the Native Americans would have considered that legend a sad story, or whether they would have just considered it a story about how this place came to be, and the connection from now into the past, and that the spirits of the bears are still alive in the land, and there's a kind of acceptance of the cyclicality of life and the beginnings and the endings. And a story doesn't have to be, the hero doesn't have to prevail in the story as that hero in order for the story to be of value or to be accepted. And I contrast that with storytelling nowadays, where we always expect the hero to prevail. The hero in this body, in this mind, this now manifested being here is going to overcome something and rise above the challenge and grow and prevail, basically. There seems to be this level on which this myth just accepts that in order for the world to exist the way it is now, there's life and death, that everything contributes to where we are now. And in receiving that and in allowing that, there's also a sort of profound peace with the way things are. We're not an ego at war with the elements. We're not striving to overcome, live longer, be bigger, defeat. There's a lot less of this need to prevail on the level of on the level of this ego. Hey, I'm doing my video post. You want to come in? That was my brother Dustin. He's running away. And so this sort of was coming through today because I was realizing, oh, well, if I'm afraid to tell Annalise that story because I'm afraid she's going to be sad about it. Well, what if I could tell her that story in a way that doesn't presume it's a sad story? What if I could tell that story in a way that allows for the cycle of life, the circle of life and death, all to contribute to where we are and to what this life is about. Life is not necessarily about prevailing now. I mean, again, I don't want to disempower myself or anyone else from rising above challenges or from asserting our light in the world and in any of those ways. But I do want to just challenge us to maybe also receive the fact that that life and death are part of life. They're all part of life. And maybe they're not so sad. Maybe there's a way of holding that experience that is deeply at ease with the nature of the world, and that allows life and death to do their thing and each to give what they have. So a deep river. To sing that, and it's not in my key. But what an amazing message. I want to cross over into campground. The songs definitely come through when they need to. Thanks, people. Appreciate you. Love you much. I'll see you tomorrow.